फावट आमी आतां तुमचे मुखार आयल्या सगळ्यांक तुमकां एक बरो दीस आवडयता. आमचो विशय सदांचो ग्रीन मिशन फॉर अ हेल्दी विजन. आमचो रोशन बाब कलांगूट मतदारसंघांत तुमचो उमेदवार ताची येवजण आमचो गांव आत्मनिर्भर आनी स्वयंपूर्ण करूंक. तर आतां हांव मागतलो रोशन बाबा लागीं आमकां येवन 2 उतरां ताणें हाचेर सांगची. रोशन बाब.
थँक्यू एंथनी. आनी तुमकां सगल्यांक एक माये मोगाचो येवकार ह्या आमचे प्रोग्रामान आनी एकदां. सो आमी हो प्रोग्राम आमचो ग्रीन मिशन जो आहा आमी स्टार्ट केल्लो इन द मंथ ऑफ सप्टेंबर, ऑलमोस्ट ऑक्टोबर. आनी तेन्ना आमी खूब लोकांक आमी झाडां दिलीं आनी बियो दिल्यो. आनी त्या भायर इन द मंथ ऑफ डिसेंबर वी ऑल्सो इंट्रोड्यूस स्ट्रॉबेरीज आमी दिले सगल्यांक. आनी म्हाका खूब खोशी भोगता कित्याक ह्या लोकांनी ते सीड्स घेवन नाल्यार ते वेजिटेबल प्लांट्स घेवन आपआपले गार्डनान बरे भाशेन तांकां सामान बरे भाशेन तेणेन वाडयल्यो. आनी तितलेंच न्हू, तेंच्यांनी मागीर जेन्ना फळां येयलीं तांकां तेणीन खूब खोशयेन आमकां ते फोटो पासून धाडले आनी आमकां खूब खोशी भोगली. सो दीस मिशन, ग्रीन मिशन, is a mission that has to stay forever and ever with you and with your family. It is not a mission for 1 day or for 2 days or till the election comes, no. The entire idea of this mission is to reverse a lot of things that are happening to you unnecessarily. And the main thing is, by eating healthy food, you will not fall sick. If you don't fall sick, you will not go to the doctor and get big bills. You will not have to spend money on medicine, and that is why you will live also a wealthy life. And that is the name of our mission, Green Mission for a Healthy and Wealthy Vision. So I welcome you once again, and all the best in the Green Mission. And if there is any way that we can help, please contact us. Thank you.
देव बरें करूं रोशन बाब. खरेंच तुज्या ह्या वावराक शाबासकी फावो. आयज आमचे मदेकात आसा बाब ऑल्वीन सिकेरा. तो गांवान सुकूरचो पूण रावता मिरामार. 2 उतरांनी ताची हांव तुका वळख करून दितां. सुमार 4 वर्सां जालीं ताणें हे झाडांचो वावर सुरू केलो. पयले सुवातेर तेणेन सुरू केलें ही सोबायेचीं झाडां लावपाक. उपरांत तो गेलो फळां दितलीं झाडां लावपाक. सवकास सवकास मसालो आनी शेकी ताणेन भाजी लावन येवजण केली. आनी ही भाजी लावन तो आपल्याच्या घरा भाजी लायता आनी तो आपले फॅमिलीक दिता. तर आमच्या मदेकात आसा वो बाब ऑल्वीन सिकेरा. आयज आमी तर कितें म्हणटा तें सारें जें आमी झाडांक घालता तें सोंपें जाता हाडपाक आमकां बाजारांतलें. आनी झाडां जेन्ना हें कॅमिकल झाडांक सारें घातल्या उपरांत तांची वाड जाता खरी, पूण आमचे मातयेक तशेंच वदीक करून आमचे भलायकेक तें माल जाता. त्या पासत आमी हें सारें घरां आमच्या कशे भाशेन तयार करूंक जाता तो आयज आमचो ऑल्वीन बाब तुमकां सांगतलो. तर ऑल्वीन बाब, येवकार तुका हे आमचे ल्हानशे कार्यावळी.
Thank you, Anthony Bab. And of course, thank you, Roshan Bab and Kalangut constituency for having me here today. Hello everyone, and welcome to yet another episode of the Green Mission. Today, I'm going to show you how we provide nutrition for our plants, for our vegetables. The same way that us humans are looking for vegetables to provide us with nutrition, we need to find a way to provide nutrition to our plants so that we can have a healthy plant to give us food. Now, the process of creating this manure, sare ami muntatteka, is very simple, and we don't need to necessarily buy it from a shop. We can create this compost right here in our homes. It's a very simple process, and what I'm going to show you today is a way by which there is absolutely no effort to create. The compost takes roughly 3 months to completely form, and once it has formed, you can use that product on your plants, be it fruiting, vegetable or ornamental. The results are just amazing. So without further ado, let me first introduce you to some of the most important things that we need to do before we start composting, and that is to get a container ready. Now, the container can be a bucket, a plastic one, a mud one. But here, today, what I'm going to show you is how to use material that you already have, possibly in your own homes. Now, this is a plastic paint bucket with a lid. So if you've got one of these or any bucket, you're already on the way to preparing your compost. So now that we've got our paint bucket, we have to remember that the paint bucket needs a little bit of work before we can start adding our material to it. In order to prepare the paint bucket to accept the raw material, we need to make some holes in it. And these are holes for aeration of the material that goes in. It needs air. Using that air, the material that we put in eventually breaks down. And now I'm going to show you how to make holes in your bucket in a very simple manner, using a pointed object, or if you like, you could heat this, or if you want, you can also use a drill machine with a drill bit to make the holes. You don't need to make too many. I'm going to make a simple one over here. So using the pointed object, pierce the paint bucket and make a few holes. You don't need too many. So if you can make perhaps something like 20 odd holes around the side of the bucket, this will provide enough aeration. I'm not going to give an actual figure because you make whatever you think would be ideal. You can never have too many, but if you have less holes, the matter inside won't decompose as quickly. Now remember, you need to also make holes below the bucket. So you don't need to make too many holes below. So that's how we make holes underneath the bucket that we're going to use for composting. So now we've made holes at the side, we've made holes at the bottom. We also need a lid to cover the composting bucket. We need to make a few holes in there too. Now for the top and the bottom, you don't need too many holes. What is important is to have enough holes at the side of the bucket. Once you've made enough holes in your composting bucket, your lid is also ready. The next most important thing is to get the material that will go into this bucket. I'm going to only speak about vegetarian material. So that is your vegetable waste. There is no non-veg or processed food that is going to go in here. If I can show you here the two most important ingredients that are going to go into this compost bucket. Number one, and that is the whole idea of your wet vegetable waste. So whatever is generated in the kitchen that forms part of vegetable waste, you keep that aside, perhaps in a smaller bucket. Keep it aside because that is what is going to go into the composting bucket eventually. The next most important ingredient is dry matter. And what I'm using here is just plain leaves. These are just plain ordinary dry leaves which you can get from probably outside the garden, or if you have an open area where leaves fall, collect those and you can use them. So this we are going to refer to as the dry material. So you have your dry and you have your wet material. Dry and wet. And remember, when this goes into your composting bucket, there has to be a balance. So the amount of wet waste that you put into your composting bucket needs to be equal to the amount of dry matter that you put in there. Now, there are times you may not find enough leaves, or you may not find leaves. Don't let that stop you. There are alternatives. You can visit a nursery and you can purchase cocoa peat. Now, cocoa peat is almost a very good dry matter material which you can use, which will prepare your compost much more quickly. So this is cocoa peat. Another material that you can use for your dry is sawdust. So if you know of a timber yard close by, you can always request them for some sawdust. So that is your dry matter. Cocoa peat, sawdust, or just plain leaves. I'm going to be using leaves for this current exercise, and the way we start our composting bucket is we take some leaves. Now this is a fairly small 5-liter composting bucket, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to fill it with leaves 1/3 of the way. Okay, so what we've done is we've put dry matter over here. 1/3 of the way down, or 1/3 of the way up, we have put just plain dry leaves. So this is your dry matter which will go into the compost bucket first. So if you don't have leaves, as I said, you could also use cocoa peat, but you will need a lot more cocoa peat because leaves on their own have a lot of volume. So if you're going to use cocoa peat, remember the amount of cocoa peat that you put in there has to be quite a substantial amount, depending on how much vegetable waste you're going to use. So now that we have put our dry matter in our compost bucket, next comes the important thing, which is your vegetable waste from your kitchen. Now you take that vegetable waste and you pour it into your compost bucket. So now what you have in there is a base of dry matter followed by vegetable waste. Having done that, what you can do, and that is the most important, is to cover it with dry matter. The reason for that, we take a few leaves and we cover it. The reason for doing that is as the vegetable matter breaks down, there is a liquid which will ooze out from this. And the dry matter is what will absorb that liquid, creating a nice, we call it like a leachate, but hopefully it will not seep through the holes at the bottom because it will be absorbed by the dry matter. So this is day 1 where you have started your compost bucket. You've put your dry matter 1/3 of the way. You've put some vegetable waste and you've covered it with the same amount of dry matter. The next day, you get some more vegetable matter. You put this on the top, followed by more dry matter. If you do not put enough dry matter in there are certain things that will take place which you may find a little odd. But don't worry about that. It is a normal process. If the solution or if the mixture gets too wet, it will give off an odor. And that odor may not be a very pleasant one to everybody. Should that happen, get some more dry matter and place it in the compost bucket. find a way to stir it if you need to. So once you have stirred that, the mixture now becomes a little more balanced. Now what if you have too many leaves? If you have too many leaves or dry matter in there, it's not going to be possible for the wet waste to break down easily. So what you'll need to do is you'll have to add more wet waste, and that wet waste can only be added probably the next day or whenever you have wet waste which you have generated from your kitchen. Now once you add that, observe the pile, and if it is too dry, as you're adding, add less of dry matter on the top. Now once you have done that and you've got some matter in here, remember to close the bucket. If you don't close the bucket and you leave it open, you'll have fruit flies gathering around here, which you might have anyway. Don't worry, the fruit flies do absolutely nothing. So cover the bucket and leave it in a place where it can get sufficient air. If possible, put a little tray underneath so that if there is any liquid or leachate as we call it that seeps through, it can be collected in that tray. That black liquid can also be used for your plants. It is rich in a lot of vitamins, NPK, which the plants will benefit from. This bucket will eventually start getting full. There'll be a nice mixture of wet waste, dry waste, wet waste, dry waste, till such time it reaches to the very top. Now once all your vegetable and dry matter have reached the very top of the bucket, close it and keep it aside. It will take a few months, roughly 3, for all this to decompose and form a lovely compost. Ami muntateka sare. Now this compost can also be purchased from a nursery, but we have created it right here in our own place. That compost must be used for your plants to provide nutrition to them, for your plants to grow healthy. Let me show you what that compost looks like at the end of 3 months. After 3 months, your compost will turn into this nice, rich black material. There are lots of beautiful nutrients in here which will benefit the plants, and you will notice that once you administer this compost to your plants, to your trees, to your ornamental flowers, they will start growing a lot better. You may say to yourself, but this does not look like something that we purchase in the store. If we go to a nursery, the compost doesn't look like this. That is because this is unfiltered. This is just raw compost which is removed from this bucket after 3 months. What we then tend to do to make it look nice is we filter this compost. This is compost which can be used on its own, but once we filter it, this is what we get. Again, this is after 3 months, and it looks like a lovely tea powder. The texture is beautiful, it is black, it is slightly damp, and that dampness indicates it is nice and rich, and it has got life in it. Before this dries off, you must use it on your plants, because once this compost material dries, it has no more value. So now I have shown you all how we do a very simple composting process, and what I'm going to do for you now is to do a very quick recap of the process involved in composting at home. Number 1, a bucket. An old one will do just as fine. Use a tool to make holes at the sides and underneath as well. So remember, you need more holes at the side and less at the bottom. Don't forget the lid. The lid is also important because this will allow for aeration and prevent creatures from entering your compost bin. So that's the container that we're going to use. We have dry matter and of course we have vegetable matter as well. So that is your kitchen waste. Take your dry matter and fill it initially a third of the way from the bottom. So we have dry matter which comes up at the base, followed by your wet waste, and then again with dry matter. Now the dry matter are the leaves, cocoa peat or sawdust. Use whatever is available or whatever you can get hold of. Keep repeating this till finally this compost bucket becomes nice and full. Bucket full जातो, ती bucket साइडिक door आणि मागेर you have to start on a second composting bin. Now once you have got that, once the first bucket is full, cover it and keep it aside. त्याचे उपरांत आणि एक bucket आड, and this will be your second one. So you will have your second bucket which you will start, and again keep on filling it up till it reaches to the top, and keep that one also aside. Like this, you may need anywhere from 3 to 5 buckets to ensure that your compost is being generated properly. To check whether or not your compost is ready, take the first composting bucket that you prepared and look inside. If the matter that is in there now looks like this, it means that your compost is now ready. You can then use that compost for your plants. Should you want to filter this, you may use a sieve and filter it so that you get this nice tea-like texture. Either way, both of these will work just as effectively on your plants. आता हे आमी म्हणटात तेका सारें. That सारें is very useful झाडांक, for your plants, for your trees, so that the fruits that grow become nice and sweet. If you've ever wondered why sometimes the fruits don't taste sweet, is because they are deprived of nutrition, food, and this food will ideally make them much more tastier. So remember, this composting exercise that I have explained to you over here is something that you can do in your own homes without purchasing anything from outside. Prepare your own compost, give that food to your plants. Your plants will be happy and they in turn will generate food for you. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you for giving us an opportunity to show you how to look after your plants by yourself. Thank you so much.
ऑलवीन बाब चड आनी चड देव बरें करूं तुका. कितले बिस्कुटायन ताणें आमकां ह्या शिबिरान शिकवण दिली. आमचो किचन वेस्ट कशे तरेन आमी कशी पद्दत वापरून हाजें सारें करूंक जाता आनी आमच्या झाडाची ऑर्गेनीक भाशेन वाड जावंक जाता पळय ती. फाटले फावटी तुमी जायते तुमचे फोटो वॉट्सॅपार आमकां पाठयल्यात आनी आमी हे तुमचे फोटो आनी व्हिडिओ पळोवन जायते खोशी जाल्या. तर तुमी फुडाराकूय अशेंच आमकां हे आमचे वॉट्सॅपार फोटो धाडटले म्हणून रावता. तर सगल्यांक तुमकां आयच्या दिसा ह्या शिबिरांत वांटो घेतलो देखून चड आनी चड देव बरें करूं.